My name is Paulina Testerman. I am co-founder of Support Our Schools, a Sarasota-based nonprofit committed to protecting public education, and I have 2 children in Sarasota County Public Schools. We as a community are urging the board to choose one side of their mouth and speak only from that side for the duration of their elected duties. It is extremely confusing to the citizens of Sarasota to listen to politicians who speak out of both sides of their mouths. Here's a list of recent examples. On November 29th, school board member Robin Marinelli stated, "I want to work with Dr. Asplin. If I get the opportunity to work with him, I will work with him and give 100%. We believed you." Minutes later, just minutes, Ms. Marinelli voted to begin negotiations to have Dr. Asplin terminated. Ms. Ziegler, on November the 1st board meeting, you stated in your evaluation that Dr. Asplin that you felt that he was able to find solutions and unify, and that he had a good moral compass, that he did a tremendous job at fiscal stewardship, and that you gave him a lot of praise. These were all of your words. You even stated that in a few instances where improvement was needed should be seen as opportunities. Opportunities. When were you planning to give Dr. Asplin an opportunity to improve? Because 29 days later, you too voted to have Dr. Asplin's contract terminated. You folks can't keep track of all your own lies. You change your message based on your audience, and you think that we're too stupid to notice. You underestimate us. We refuse to take a back seat and allow you to run public education into the ground. Our students and our teachers deserve better, which leads me to the ringleader of the 3-ring circus, Miss Karen Rose, the only school board member who stated, quote, "I do feel that there is an adversarial relationship between me and the superintendent, and I don't see it as workable." None of the other school board members stated that their relationship with Dr. Asplin was adversarial. Maybe, just maybe, Dr. Asplin isn't the problem. Maybe Ms. Rose needs to dig in a little deeper to figure out who is creating an adversarial environment for the school board. Maybe she needs to step down from her position and allow someone less adversarial to take her place. Better yet, maybe she should Google her options. Lastly, I hope the citizens of Sarasota are aware of the fact that this board will be throwing away $175,000 taxpayer dollars that Dr. Asplin was owed based on his contract. That doesn't even begin to take into account the money it will take to find a competent superintendent to take his place. But let's be honest, this board isn't really looking for competency. This board is looking for a lapdog. So what will this political power grab cost our schools? According to the Florida School Board Association, a ballpark cost can run up to $70,000, not to mention the man hours it will take for our district to find yet another superintendent. In total, this 3-ring circus will cost Sarasota taxpayers a minimum of $245,000, not to mention a black eye. Do you know what our teachers could do with $245,000? I'm willing to bet you don't.
Thank you. Karen Kirsch and Mary Mann. After Mary Mann, we have Dr. Rebecca, I believe that says Lease.
Good evening. My name is Karen Kirsch. I spoke at the last meeting, but as a reminder, my husband and I, as well as our 2 boys, are all graduates of Pineview School. I also served as one of Mrs. Ziegler's appointees to the Citizens Advisory Committee when Dr. Asplin was hired. I am here tonight to urge the board to reverse course and vote to retain Dr. Asplin as our superintendent. To date, none of you has provided a cogent explanation as to why terminating Dr. Asplin or accepting his resignation is in the best interests of our district. The question of why has simply not been answered, not by you and not by the loudest voices in this room or on social media. As a conservative Republican myself, my assessment is that the 4 of you, following the August election, overestimated the depth and the breadth of the support you'd have for this move against Dr. Asplin among Republican voters and in the wider community. And I think that you very badly underestimated the level of support for Dr. Asplin that exists in all of the critical stakeholder groups to which you owe a duty: teachers, staff, students, parents, and the community. Because you may view every issue as being red versus blue, you fail to understand that for most of us, even conservative voters, education should be a nonpartisan issue. Everyone I know who voted for Zem or earlier for Mrs. Rose feels duped and betrayed by your efforts to oust a highly regarded, high-performing, and by your own measures, highly effective superintendent. So I implore you to put our district ahead of your personal and political motivations and find a way to move forward with Dr. Asplin. In my view, it is the only way to begin to repair the damage that this whole debacle has already caused. The community has lost faith and trust in the new board. 97% of the teachers who responded to the survey want Dr. Asplund retained. The speakers and emails in favor of Dr. Asplund far outweigh those who want him gone. Please do not equate the volume of those who disrupt these board meetings and post on Facebook with the number of them, because there are far more people like me, moderate Republicans who vote and oppose this effort to oust Dr. Asplund than there are voters who support what you're trying to do. And you know that. You heard the speakers at the last meeting, you've seen the emails, you read the piece in The Observer. You saw what happened at the recent Sarasota GOP leadership election. The four of you have inadvertently found the one issue that has united people of all political stripes in this community. We want Dr. Asplund to stay. It is not too late to reverse course. As I often tell my boys, it is never too late to do the right thing. With the exception of Mrs. Rose, my impression at the last meeting was that the rest of you were open to finding a way out of this disastrous start to the new board's tenure. Get a mediator. Put a timeline and benchmarks in place. Lead. I don't know if Dr. Asplund is willing to stay, and I wouldn't blame you if you are not. But please retain him.
Thank you very much. Mary Mann, Dr. Rebecca Leese, and Ronna Bianchi.
To our student representative here, I hope that you noticed that the newest Supreme Court Justice, Ketanji Brown Jackson, was a champion debater in Miami-Dade as well. I may be naive, but I think that it's never over till it's over. I would hope that since we have discovered that this board is really political in nature and really political creatures, you will have read and heard the outpouring of support for Superintendent Asplund. You've seen it on the editorial pages, you've seen it in the letters to the editor, you've seen it from the people who have come here, from the teachers in their voting to want to retain him. And you continue to talk, or some continue to talk, about the drop in reading scores, neglecting the fact that the reading scores, not only in the entire state of Florida, but the entire country, have dropped because of COVID and kids being out of school. That's a reality. And to blame this man for that is utterly ridiculous. Let's be honest. Superintendent Asplund is being punished for following the health standards set up by the United States and had people, students in schools, wearing masks despite what the governor wanted. So he's being punished by the governor and those that he helped to get on this school board for doing the right thing. To the superintendent, I would say, Sarasota's loss is some other county's gain. But I would hope and I would recommend that it not be a county in Florida until the political climate changes and we can get back to educating our students. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Rebecca Lees, Ronna Bianchi, Lisa Shur.
Good evening. Transparency? How in God's name do people who were elected and never served 1 minute get installed and then moments later vote to have Dr. Asplund fired? I do not understand this at all. You say you are fiscally conservative? Firing a stellar superintendent causes great cost and wasted money to our district. I never read or heard a peep during the campaign about any dissatisfaction about the superintendent. It seems clear that this is an item of politics, not finance, that drove this action. I taught for 35 years at both high school and university level and never knew my colleagues' politics, nor did I care. We had a job to do. We had papers to correct, lesson plans to prepare, meetings to attend, committee work to do. There was no time for such folly. People should be appalled that these dog and pony shows interfering with school business, that are interfering with school business. The school board and the superintendent and staff should be 100% focused on instruction and learning, staff development, facilities management, and budget, not partisan politics. I looked back through the records and found interesting conflicts with what many of you there on the board have said and claimed versus what you have been doing. Starting out with Mr. Enos's campaign materials, I saw stated in large letters, "Leading with integrity." This rings very hollow. You never once during your campaign mentioned any dissatisfaction with Dr. Asplin. I consider that you not to be trustworthy. Ms. Marinelli, you claimed interest to raise student achievement, protect parental rights, and restore accountability. When did parents have their rights lost? What are you restoring? How does firing an A-grade superintendent raise achievement? Who of any quality would now like to come and teach and lead here? I've listened to you go on with compliments about Dr. Asplin, but then you voted to fire him twice. I also note that you have Elon Musk on your Facebook page as a friend. Ms. Ziegler, what is uttered by you is distinctly different from your actions. We know that Moms for Liberty is funded by the Kochs, and we know you are aligned with Hillsdale College and Christopher Rufo and DeSantis et al., all of whom are major political operatives supporting Christian nationalism. That will not lead to A ratings for our schools. Privatizing our schools will not lead to A ratings either. And finally, Ms. Rose, in reviewing press articles, I see serious discrepancies in your positions over the last few years.
Thank you very much. Ronna Bianchi, Lisa Shur, Lois Wilkins.
Good evening. My name is Ronna Bianchi, and I'm a resident of Sarasota. Now, can you hear me now?
Better. Sorry,
Okay.
it's not so close. Yeah.
My name is Ronna Bianchi, and I'm a resident of Sarasota. Looking at Dr. Asplin and reflecting on recent events, I'm reminded of an Edmund Burke quote: "The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing." I'm not implying that any of the board members are evil, far be it from that, but duplicitous, definitely. It seems they rode to victory in a Trojan horse. What they campaigned on and what we got was not the same. A hidden agenda was exposed when the first order of business, before the oath of office was barely recited, was to call a special meeting to discuss the termination of Dr. Asplin. I have no problem with those who support private and religious schools, but I think it's disingenuous for those to serve on public school boards. Are there problems in public schools? Of course, but disrupting the system is not the way to solve them. At the November 29th meeting, it was obvious, Dr. Asplin, that you are well respected and supported by the staff and the community. So I'm pleading with you to stay. It won't be easy, but then nothing worth doing is. Think of Don Quixote fighting a real foe. And let me engage in some magical thinking. Perhaps I've watched Mr. Smith Goes to Washington and It's a Wonderful Life too many times. Give me my Jimmy Stewart moment. The young folk in the crowd, Google him. Please, Dr. Asplin, stay. I have a little, I can't say optimistic, but a little bit of hope. At the workshop earlier today, I sense an inkling that this was possible. I'm not alone in hoping that this will be resolved and you will remain our superintendent. And just a little side note, I won't have to keep going to these meetings all the time, and I can finally audition at McCurdy's.
Thank you. Lisa Shur, Lois Wilkins, Sebastian Gersel. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly.
Ronna, you're always a hard act to follow. My name is Lisa Shur. I'm the parent of a student in the district. I'm one of the co-founders of Support Our Schools, a nonprofit dedicated to public education. Support Our Schools put out a petition, so I'm here today to speak on behalf of the almost 1,200 people who signed said petition. I'd like to read the petition. We as a community wish to go on record that we believe the board's action in firing Superintendent Asplin was thoroughly lacking in transparency and is a partisan political move. We believe that this is evidence of the board's intention to put politics before our children's education. Our children should not be used as political pawns. If the school board refuses to reverse its decision on terminating Dr. Asplin, then as a next step, we call for the board to involve the community in a fully transparent recruiting process for the new superintendent. To regain the trust of the community, an independent search committee should be formed, and that should include parents, students, teachers, and other community members. We also believe that Karen Rose should immediately resign from the Sarasota County School Board. Ms. Rose spent decades in this school district as a teacher and a high-level administrator, much of it during the period that the achievement gap was allowed to grow unabated. Yet she has moved to fire a superintendent who's only been here in his position for 2 years, during which he was confronted with a worldwide pandemic, a massive hurricane, and a dysfunctional school board at the helm. Her attempts to hold him responsible for the lack of improvement in the decades-old achievement gap is simply absurd. The public outpouring of support from parents, students, teachers, the media, and the larger community is further proof that Ms. Rose stands alone at this juncture. It is time for Ms. Rose to acknowledge that she is the problem, not Dr. Asplin, and the solution is to fire her, not him.
Okay, so I'm going to try one more time. Otherwise, we'll recess. We could be here a long time. I don't want to do that. I'm not kicking anyone out, really, because I just don't want to do that. So if you want to do jazz hands, great. But if we can't hear when people talk, then we'll just recess and we'll reassess. So moving on. Lois Wilkins, Sebastian Gersel, and Melissa Bacandi. Thank you so much.
Lois Wilkins, representing the African American Cultural Resource Center and the Betty J. Johnson North Sarasota Public Library. A member also of the ASALA, Minnesota branch of the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. Tomorrow, or Thursday, we will have a celebration of Kwanzaa. And Kwanzaa is the contributions that have been made in this community and in our country and around the world. We are celebrating. My extension of you as a new board, come out and see. Come out and see for yourself what is going on in the community. I'm glad to have the opportunity to just say to you over the past, 12 months, maybe 13 months, I've spoken to you, those of you who've been on this board. I've seen how hard you try to work. But you have heard in this community opposition to the decision that you're making to release Dr. Asplin. He's done a fine job. We thank you, Dr. Asplin. We appreciate you, and if it is true that you are contemplating staying, we would advocate for that support to do so. Those of you who don't believe that he should stay, I would ask you to give him some time. Robin and Tim, I don't think you've been on the board long enough to really be able to support his dismissal if you haven't even had a chance to work with him. That's not fair. Ms. Rose, I tell you, I've watched you a long time, and I think it is time for you to go. I'm sorry. Now, Bridget, you have capabilities, you have leadership skills, and you can make a difference. And I do hope that in this position that you're doing right now, that you will go deep into your soul a little bit. Because you're young enough, your kids are not in the school district, and there's a whole lot of stuff that is before you that I think you can benefit from if you really will take influential leadership and not dogmatic leadership. Tom, thank you for being the sole spoken person. We appreciate you. We know that this is not an easy job for you, but I'm very happy that you have tried to bridge the gap between your board members. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sebastian Gersel, and forgive me, I don't know if I'm saying your last name correctly, Melissa Pagandi, Michelle Posey. Can you say your last name for me?
It's Gersel, you're right.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. I'm Sebastian Gersel, and I'm a student at Riverview High School. Members of the Sarasota County School Board, you were elected to create real change in a district that has been mismanaged by those in leadership positions, such as Superintendent Asplin. This needed change must also include looking at school-based administrative leadership. The former two superintendents and the former board allowed rot to grow within our school-based administrative positions across the district. I am suggesting to this board that upon hiring a new superintendent, you instruct him or her to conduct an audit of all Sarasota-based administrative leadership across public schools. This audit must focus on their leadership, procedures, policies, ethics, performance, and overall job they have done and are doing at their campuses. According to many, and you can look at past climate surveys, and not just the numerical results, but the comments as well, this must happen. Truthfully, the problems on our school campuses are thanks to a number of people, such as Superintendent Asplin for failing to manage this district properly, Mr. Edwards and the former board for putting themselves first before the students, failing administrators for failing to manage our campuses properly, and I personally have a story regarding that right here, and I have copies for all of you, which I would love to give you. And let's not forget the supporting actors of all of those people and the failures that they bring with them. The fake news Sarasota Herald Tribune, the corrupt teachers union, and of course the anti-student Democratic Party of Sarasota. This and so much more is why I asked this board to remove Superintendent Asplin and to conduct a county-wide school-based administrative audit and to investigate the rot that is happening in our schools and is hindering the actual reason, Superintendent Asplin, why our school is being hindered from reaching ultimate success. Thank you.
Thank you very much. No, please, let's keep it to the jazz hands. Thank you. Melissa Pagandi and Michelle Posey. Jennifer Cottrill.
Melissa Bacandi, school board members, Dr. Asplin. Regarding agenda minutes, attention, it appears the minutes and video recordings of the school board meetings are being altered and edited to fit the left's narrative and to silence the citizens speaking out on the evils in this district. At the last meeting, only comments in favor of Dr. Asplin were noted on agenda minutes. Any negative comments were not noted as in opposition to Dr. Asplin, but rather as general comment. Please do not approve these minutes today, but investigate who is in charge of the board minutes and their recording. They are not accurate. It appears this could be intentional to mislead the public, aka playing politics. This lack of transparency at the landings really concerns me and is exactly why this board needs to clean house. I call on the board to not only terminate Dr. Asplin, but also evaluate anyone else at the landings that contributes or enables this less than transparent behavior. I believe self-proclaimed woke school board member Tom Edwards refers to this behavior as working a personal agenda from the best strategic spot from the inside. And if I didn't email you specifically, Mr. Edwards, you should have to FOIA it, because I don't trust you. Welcome to Dr. Asplin's Insurrection Day. Dr. Asplin said if the board lost confidence in him, he would gladly resign. But what we see here today is Dr. Asplin inciting an insurrection with hundreds of Democratic protesters being bussed in. And who knows, probably even paid protesters, since the leader of Support Our Schools, Lisa Shur, has admittedly paid for protesters in the past. Let's review once again the facts why Dr. Asplin needs terminated. Number one, under his leadership, third grade reading FSA scores are the lowest in 8 years, and our district has fallen from number 2 to number 7 in the state, and we all had COVID. Number two, instead of educating our children, Dr. Asplin chooses to allow activism over academics on campus. Number three, Dr. Asplin wouldn't take a stand and allow parents to record their children's IEP meetings. Number four, he admittedly broke sunshine law by forming an illegal equity committee. Number five, he refuses to let parents opt out of Character Strong SEL. Number six, under his watch, there have been unprecedented legal fees. Number seven, let's not forget that he broke the law by violating the governor's executive order on mask mandates. Number eight, Dr. Asplin violates his own district's nepotism policy. Number nine, perhaps most egregious, Dr. Asplin is anti-parent and lies about campuses being open. He declared that parents could walk their kids into school when he knows full well that not a single school in the district is allowing parents to walk their children into the classroom daily. Number 10, I know we're the enemy, right, teachers? Asplin has apparently become an investigator and judge, and by default denied justice to DJ in the DJ case. Please look that up. Number 11, most recently, under Dr. Asplin's leadership, Sarasota County was named in another lawsuit for violating Sunshine Law in regards to choosing ELA and math books. Now, I hear cries from Board Member Edwards on how getting rid of Dr. Asplin is political. Tom, you're the king of politics. You announced to the whole world that you are working from the inside to advance a woke agenda. It is you, Mr. Edwards, who likes to attend grooming events. And Dr. Asplin?
Thank you. Michelle Posey, Jennifer Cottrell.
We can't afford your failed leadership anymore.
Christy Carwatt. Ladies and gentlemen, can we please quiet down? Next up, I have Michelle Posey, Jennifer Cottrell, Christy Carwatt.
Hi, everyone. Michelle Posey from District 3. I was reading earlier today on social media from from Mr. Edwards, I almost gave you a promotion there, that the union was supporting Dr. Asplin, and I thought that was really strange because I hadn't heard anything from our teachers union about board member Shirley Brown from the former board saying that we should treat teachers unfairly. Those that are vaxxed should get sick day pay, and those that are unvaxxed should not. You would think our union would care about that. I also didn't hear about union support when Bridget Ziegler wanted to give teachers an extra $300 in their pockets, only to have Dr. Asplin delay it and say it should be workshopped, thus delaying it after the August election. So I didn't see the union jump in there, and I also didn't see the union jump in and protest over your $170,000 severance pay, which is 3 times more what our teachers make. So I'm not sure how you ended up having fans that you are likely to step all over. That's kind of funny. People will say you're highly effective. I would say you had a highly effective marketing campaign about Asplin on the move, yet it seems to be really tough to get you to move. There are some things that you failed at. Our grade 3 FSA ELA scores dropped under you. You have failed to obey Sunshine Law when you created the equity committee and did not give them the directive to operate in the sunshine. We are also, as Melissa said, being sued by Florida Citizens Alliance again because you allowed the adoption committee for the curriculum adoptions to meet outside of the sunshine. And you also took pornographic material that I personally talked to you about. You took it off the shelf and then you buckled and put it back on the shelf. And I'm talking things that would make 50 Shades of Grey sound like a nursery rhyme. So you are nowhere near the level of superintendent that we want to see here in Sarasota, and I commend all of you for having the backbone to do. Anybody who talked to you throughout your campaigns understood that we all knew that Dr. Asplin was the puppet of Jane and Shirley, and it is Sarasota County 2.0. We will not have the old in with the new. Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer Cottrell, Christy Carwatt, Tanya Paris.
Good evening, Jennifer Cottrell. I would like to take a few moments to express my views on the termination of the superintendent. Dr. Asplin, I recall the first meeting I ever spoke at here and discussed my frustration on how the school system had failed my son, who at the time was an ESC student at RHS. Immediately after I spoke, you sent several folks out to speak to me to try to get a better understanding of my issue. I was impressed and thought to myself, he actually listened and seemed truly concerned. I had hope that we were going to make some huge progress for our ESC students, and I truly felt we could work together for the best interests of these students. Then one evening, as you said on the dais, you called out the ESC parents that spoke regularly, and we all know I spoke very regularly at the time, liars. That was a huge slap in the face, not only to me, but to my son, as he was the one I was fighting for. At the same time, you patted everyone in the ESC department on the back for a job well done. It was at that point I realized I was going to have to fight even harder for my son and those like him, and that's what I did. I rode the ESC department and hounded them daily. It wasn't going to let your words that night or lack of action stop me. I eventually got an ESC focus group for parents and staff, and we put together a full report of suggestions that we felt would benefit not only the students but the staff. Had you helped us with that at all schools, we could have shared that data across the district and used what worked in one school to help another. All it takes is listening to our students, parents, and staff to make progress and make a difference for all students, not just a select few. But it was easier for the district to just treat them as casualties and just focus on students that were easier to teach. Maybe for once someone could have put themselves in their shoes and you would have realized these kids had huge potential. Had the district paid a little bit more attention to what we were saying, we could have turned that ship around. Let's not forget how long it took the fight to get laptops distributed to most to the most needed students. That should have been a no-brainer and been done immediately, but instead we had to fight for them, and it took many months to get them in the hand of students, and to be honest, some are still waiting. I recall a meeting with you in July of 2021 and provided you a 2-page list of issues that I had received from RHS staff and parents. That seemed to fall on deaf ears. Bullying was a big issue, and nothing was done. Still hasn't been dealt with. The seniors at RHS took matters into their own hands during their bullying university last month. They called the administration out in the middle of the assembly for not doing anything about the constant bullying. We have seen the videos from that day that the students took, and Dr. Godfrey can attest to what those students expressed. And here we are with another issue swept under the rug at the expense of our students. What does it take for you to just admit that the district has made mistakes, acknowledge it, and then do something about it? That, sir, would have gained huge respect from this community, but instead we are met with constant denial and lies. The only ones that suffer is our students. How many students do we need to sacrifice before something is done? For this reason, sir, it's time for someone to come in and run this district that truly has the best interest of the students. And you can take Mr. Edwards with you, sir.
Please, thank you. Ms. Christy Carwat, Tanya Paris, Melissa Radovich.
Good evening. I'm Christy Carwat. I'm a teacher at Sarasota High School. I've been a teacher in this district for almost 40 years, 29 at Sarasota High School. I had 2 children go through this school district, and they got a fine education. First, I want to address Dr. Asplin. I know it is almost hopeless to think you will remain as our superintendent, as this board had planned to fire you even before the August election. Plus, under the circumstances, it would be difficult for you to remain, as I doubt you, like most of us who work in the school district, feel you can ever trust 4 members of this board ever again. But please know, you have our support, at least the support of about 97% of us, many of whom voted for Zim. To all but Mr. Edwards, you lied to the entire community when you said you would be transparent and include the community in the decision-making. In fact, Mrs. Rose, you said in an interview with The Observer, which was published in July of 2020, that you would, and I quote, include students, parents, staff, and the community in policy decision-making, and that you would, I quote again, ensure that school board policies, vision, and mission reflect the community's voice. But you are only listening to a few loud voices. You 4 members campaigned on getting politics out of our schools. Yet, your first order of business once the new members were sworn in was to fire Dr. Asplin, our highly qualified and widely respected superintendent, without any public notice. And why? For no other reason than your own political game. Mrs. Ziegler's husband even bragged about his wife's political maneuvering on his Twitter feed, talking about something about scalping Dr. Asplin. You got his scalp. Your decision obviously had nothing to do with what is best for our students. Have you forgotten that you serve all the people of this school district, not just a small group of extremists or the governor? You 4 have allowed the engineered false statements about teachers indoctrinating students with liberal ideology and teaching students to hate America to continue and to fester. Mrs. Ziegler, you once said on Fox News, and I quote, "I don't want my children and their peers to learn to hate America through the anti-American curriculum that we continue to see." Well, I've been in this district for almost 40 years, and I have not seen that happen yet. I have only witnessed a teacher share his personal political ideology once. I remember walking down the hallway during the Obama presidency when I heard a teacher talking negatively to his students about Obama. This teacher had no problem sharing his political opinion with his students. I was really shocked and dismayed that he was doing so, especially because I didn't quite understand what politics had to do with algebra. But not to worry, that teacher no longer teaches in this district. He teaches at a school that uses the curriculum provided by a small right-wing Christian college. Mrs. Ziegler, I am sure you are very
Tanya
aware of that
Paris,
school.
Melissa Radovich, Teresa DeWitt.
Hi, Tanya Paris, Sarasota County resident and president of Sarasota County Moms for America. I'd like to say that I'm personally very happy that we now have a board that has promised over and over again to be in 100% alignment with our children. I think that the county has spoken and found that there was a lack of support for our kids, and that's why you're here. I can't stand before you and tell you in the future that I will agree with every decision you make and blindly support you. I know that I and others will be holding you all accountable to the promise that you all made, which was to be leaders and role models protecting our parental rights and also supporting our children in every decision before you. But tonight is not one of those nights. It's not the night that I'm going to disagree with you. I'm in full support with the decision to remove Dr. Asplin from his role as superintendent. For the past year, I have attended these board meetings. I have seen behaviors by the old board and superintendent that I wouldn't want my kids to see. The rudeness and callous outbursts drew in more and more divisiveness, impacting our community. All along the last year, Dr. Asplin had an opportunity to rise above that board behavior. He had the ability before the public to act independently from the board and be able to demonstrate quality leadership. Leadership comes from a form of self-sacrificing to stay true to what's best for the entire team. What I think has been the problem with Dr. Asplin is that he seems to show quite a bit of arrogance. And that may be okay in some situations, but definitely not coming from our superintendent. Arrogant leaders make excuses. They blame others, and they even lie to save face. When you see an arrogant leader, you can tell. They challenge every criticism that's made about them. This behavior erodes trust with your community. Humbly admitting when you are wrong shows strength in leadership. In fact, it's what makes a great leader. Owning your mistake models for all the employees on how to act when they in fact screw up. The power that a leader has is incredible, and it can make a great change and set the tone for the rest of the school system. Unlike others you may hear up here, I won't stand here and I won't call names, and I refuse to be vicious and point fingers. But I will say that we have seen what side of the fence Dr. Asplin is on. He has made it very clear. How could we ever trust Dr. Asplin at this point to make a centered decision just because our board has flipped? I find it very difficult given the lack of leadership that we have seen in the past, and to be honest, it's been a hard and rough past year, and I think the time has come to say enough is enough. It's time to move on to a new leader who represents both sides. I know it's hard for some people to swallow that this board may in fact be doing the right thing. I know change is hard, especially when it's been politicized, and I definitely know it's hard to think that a person on the other side of the fence may make better decisions for our children, but the time is today.
Thank you. Melissa Radovich, Teresa DeWitt, and Elizabeth Bornstein.
Did you say Tweesa? That's fine. All right. Okay. Is my time just started? Okay, sorry. As a therapist, I've always told my clients therapy is like peeling layers of an onion. If I had chopped the onion in two, it would be traumatic. Tonight, I will not peel layers back. I've done that for over a year. And Dr. Asplin, you've refused to provide transparent info to the board or stakeholders. The SEL market is booming to the tune of $3.7 billion by 2024. Corporate America also wants to get their hands on $43 billion being given out by the WEF. I would again like to state that our SEL programming is through CASEL. CASEL and SEL are the same company. Panorama is the official data collection arm of CASEL. Sanford Harmony, Character Strong, and Second Step through a foundation are all CASEL owned. Dr. Asplin, why have you continued to say Character Strong is mandatory? Let me be clear. Character education is required, not Character Strong. Why did you tell parents they could opt out, then say no, then say parents could if they could show they met the curriculum requirement and then be allowed to have alternative assignment? So is Character Strong not mandatory? Why was a district opt-out form not placed on the website? Why did you not send out an update to principals? Why was I told by my principal Character Strong pilot was this year? Why did it take months for you to give us the 8 pilot school names? Why is Deborah using Sanford Harmony SEL to satisfy the SAMHA requirement? That's a mental health program. Castle states SEL is not a mental health program, so tell me why a teacher is conducting a process group with SEL asking children if they hear voices during circle time. They're 5. Are you aware it is unethical to conduct a process group with more than 12 children and without a counseling license or consent forms? Why has no one informed parents in IEP meetings or when their child goes to Tier 2 that SEL is embedded? When were you going to list SEL as a goal on a federal IEP form? You were not. Let me say as a therapist, all behavioral problems are not a mental health problem. At this point, teachers are being made to implement SEL, and due to the poor programming that cannot meet peer review status and a mental health component, teachers are working outside the scope of their license. It is of my professional opinion, Dr. Asplin, you have continued to operate and bring forth programming, combined and layering programs to achieve a mental health referral base. The SEL now is going to combine the equity and gender layer through CASEL. Dr. Asplin, a pilot program without consent and data is simply an illegal experiment on our children. Where is the data you collected that you said you didn't collect? If I had 20 minutes with these stakeholders and teachers and a whiteboard, Dr. Asplin, you and several of your administrators would be escorted to your cars. You have opened this district as well as teachers to potential litigation for allowing your principals and administrators to run interference and shutting out transparency before the fact. I have brought this information to this board repeatedly for the last year, and CASEL continues to be embedded into our classrooms. We could remove CASEL tomorrow and teachers would not miss it. Even Panorama states it cannot provide peer-reviewed data because they keep changing the standards. Thank you.
Thank you. Melissa Radovich, Elizabeth Bornstein, Nevia Clausen.
Hello, I'm Melissa Radovich, mother of two, former educator and staunch supporter of the nuclear family and conservative American values, since we are now apparently disclosing our affiliations. For years, I've watched this board make national news headlines for the wrong reasons. Jane and Shirley are gone, and now it's time to remove the man who was at the front lines of the circus. In watching the November 29th board meeting, it became clear that the narrative being pushed was that our board members are bringing politics to the dais. The definition of politics is governance over a country or a certain area, such as our school district. Board members are elected by our community, and it was made clear in August and then again in November that Sarasota County favors conservative values, like it or not. ZEM is a movement built by we the people, not a political machine. Do you know that our own Republican Party, Jack Brill, Joe Gruder, Ziegler, they promoted BRT instead of ZEM? Ever heard of BRT? No. Concerned parents fought, and concerned parents in our county won. Passionate parents visited 2 to 3 schools every single day for weeks, asking parents to vote, which they did. Our county fought hard to get ZEM elected, and we trust that you will stand your ground and do what's right for our kids. Jane Goodwin swooned over Dr. Asplin, and that was the first red flag in my book. It is often mentioned that Dr. Asplin came to Sarasota from a top-ranked school district. But he did not lead that school district. He was one of their deputy superintendents. He was not selected to move forward as superintendent in his own county and was rejected from our county the first time he applied. I have met with Dr. Asplin and seen the blatant disregard for parental concerns. He would not help to explain the proper process to have pornographic books removed from our libraries. I explained to him in person that I had to remove my 6-year-old son, place him in a charter school because of an unapproved school lesson on homosexuality, and he couldn't care less. He masked our kids against the governor's orders. He organized an equity committee behind closed doors, and currently we have an open court case for our improperly selected curriculum, as well as 2 cases which are too devastating to bring up. Our last board meeting was embarrassing. You are not an elected official. In my opinion, your superiors should have fired you on the spot. Also, iPetition.com accepts phony names and made-up email addresses, so let's not pretend that the numbers presented by Lisa Shur mean anything. Thank you.
Elizabeth Bornstein, Nevia Clausen, Lieutenant Colonel Duffy Smiley.
Good evening. I'm Elizabeth Bornstein. Since the swearing-in ceremony when Mrs. Rose made the erroneous motion to fire Dr. Asplin, our Sarasota County Schools community has been in a state of shock, turmoil, and grief. This holiday massacre was a sneak attack on our superintendent and is part of a master plan holding Sarasota County Schools hostage. It has been an utter waste of everyone's time and the taxpayers' money, very easily preventable. Mrs. Rose, Mrs. Ziegler, Mrs. Marinelli, Mr. Enos, you are complicit in weaponizing Sarasota County schools with partisan politics. School boards should not be extremism training grounds, and how ironic that board chair Mrs. Ziegler conducted her first in-person Leadership Institute training for conservative school board members as the director of school board programs this very week. As the Sarasota County School Board, you are tasked with setting policy for the school district that advances educational opportunities for all students. And transparency is mandatory. Where is it? You have broken the community's trust, and you need to start working on restoring it now. Loss and grief often immobilize and cause a sense of speechlessness. Yet in this case, it is the very opposite. The damage you've caused has brought a level of advocacy that you have not seen here before. Dr. Asplin may be the sacrificial lamb, but we will not go away. We will not stay silent, and we will not forget. In times of such despair, many turn to faith. We've seen it in the dais before. Rabbinic wisdom supports wise and compassionate decisions made by government officials. They guide us to pray for the welfare of leadership when it is failing. For justice, help us in this time of crisis, a crisis of leadership at the highest level on our board, as well as the state and national level for the welfare of public education. A crisis of conduct in targeting our superintendent and a lack of transparency, a crisis of the abuse of power, a crisis for our democracy. For truth, to help us face the deep divide on our board, the crisis of partisan politics and extremism dictating curriculum changes and access to learning materials that support critical thinking, diversity, and inclusion, the real emergencies, the crisis of hatred, racism, homophobia, and anti-Semitism. I may be a tragic optimist, as I still have high hopes. Please bring our community an opportunity for healing. Sarasota County School Boards, may you rescind your motion, retain Dr. Asplin, work to restore our trust and faith in your leadership and fiduciary responsibilities. Sarasota County School Board, may you strengthen and reinforce administration, teachers, and staff to continue to do the most difficult work they are highly trained and qualified to do. And most of all, may you support the learning, growth, and development of our children, your students, so they can thrive. They are our future. And for God's sake, after the past 2 years, don't they deserve some peace? A wise rabbi said, on three things does the world stand.
Thank you.
On justice, on truth.
Livia Clausen, Lieutenant Duff Smiley. I've got it. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Lieutenant Duff Smiley, Angela Nguyen.
Nivea Vega Clausen, Moms for Liberty. Dr. Asplin has painted himself as a victim of a politicized school board, but who is the one actually abusing their power? He is a darling of the local media, the Democratic Party, and the most powerful union in the world, the teachers union. Let me be clear, when I say the teachers union, I don't mean teachers. The teachers I talk with are afraid of the teachers union. If they aren't in line with the union agenda, they keep their mouths shut or suffer the consequences. When Dr. Asplin gushes over the support of the teachers union with his friends at the Herald Tribune, this tells us who Dr. Asplin is prioritizing. If there is one thing the teachers union's power brokers have shown us is that they do not represent students' interests. Don't forget that all dues collected by the local chapters feed into the National Teachers Union. You need to ask yourself, why is the teachers union fighting this hard for Dr. Asplin? The teachers union is the reason that I left the teaching profession when I was an English teacher in Florida. During the 6 years that I taught English, despite the fact that I consistently exceeded expectations, was awarded Disney Teacher of the Year, and helped my students achieve the highest improvement in their reading and writing scores, and was the only Hispanic teacher in the school with 60% Hispanic students, I was constantly under threat of being pink-slipped, while teachers who were showing little to no growth with their students were secured a job. Why? Because the crown jewel of the teachers union is tenure. Who is hurt most by this policy? All students, and most especially our Black and brown students. If ever there was a systemically racist institution, it is the teachers union. From its inception in 1886, the Florida Education Association's membership was initially limited to white teachers and administrators. The teachers union continues its discrimination today by advocating for lower standards, lobbying against vouchers, and focusing on tenure over performance. And let's not forget that the teachers' unions were the staunchest advocates for school closures, which further increased the academic gap for our Black and brown students. Regardless of how Dr. Asplund identifies politically, the teachers' union sees him as a tool for their agenda. The teachers' union has had an iron grip on education policy, school board members, and administration for as long as anyone can remember. Parents dared to stand up to the teachers' union, voting for school board members who would focus on students and parental rights. Beyond his close affiliation with the teachers' union, Dr. Asplund should be fired for disregarding our sunshine laws as he implemented policies designed by the Illegal Equity Committee, lack of student academic achievement, and nepotism for hiring his wife at an above-average pay scale. These are just some of the things that we know about. There is much more that the board is unable to disclose due to privacy.
Thank you very much. Lieutenant Colonel Duffy Smiley, Angela Nguyen, Connie Bruni.
Yeah, I'm Duffy, better known as Diane Smiley's husband. I'm an Air Force Academy graduate. I flew airplanes for the Air Force for over 20 years. Went to work for General Motors Design and did veterans outreach there. My wife and I have fostered over 20 children and adopted 3 children of all races. My wife was an Air Force nurse, of whom I'm very proud, and she was a public health nurse. Politics in school, wow. Now that is a surprise. When I was 18 years old, Ange Candela got a group together and moved Oscar Musgrave out of the superintendent's position in Ashtabula, Ohio. That same year, my beloved pastor, Olin Hull, was moved out of his church. Politics is a fact of life, and it's no different in the school system, and superintendents are political. You can't avoid that. That's what the name of the game is. Newsflash, superintendents, including Dr. Asplund, are political. Dr. Asplund was political when he established the Equity Council and hid it from the sunshine. He was political when he opposed the governor's mask policy. He was political when he aligned himself with the majority of the previous board on most issues and ignored the minority. He presided over a hiring spree when he should have been downsizing. And that hiring spree included his own wife, which was probably legal, but probably doesn't look good, not good judgment. He wouldn't provide requests for information to Mrs. Rose, probably because she was in the minority, and he didn't have to because he had the other 3 board members on his side. He didn't impress Tim Enos when he was on Dr. Asplund's staff. And, you know, it's a real son of a gun when you go from being the employee to the employer or vice versa. And so Tim Enos had a unique insight into what was going on in this school system, and he brings that to the table. And finally, he didn't respond to Mrs. Ziegler after the board was installed. This happens all the time in industry, in schools, in churches. New people come in, new leaders come in, and all of a sudden the fit isn't what it used to be. I want to leave this, that one thing we need to do is ensure that our country respects our flag and our teachers and our moms and dads. That ought to be utmost in the area of respect. And I think we've crowded out a lot of that with some other types of teachings. Bye.
Thank you very much. Angela Nguyen, Connie Bruni, Robin Williams.
Hi, in case anyone forgot, my name is Angela Nguyen. I have a daughter in a Sarasota County public school, and I'm one of the co-founders of Support Our Schools. It is nice to be back and to see everyone again. Oh, how I've missed y'all. Life is interesting. It's comprised of the choices we make and the result of them, but it's also rife with events that we have no control over, both good and bad. The last 6 weeks in my world have been comprised of a nonstop series of events in which I had no control over, and it's been intense. But it's also caused me to reflect on what it means to be part of a community and to live in a democratic nation. A nation that prides itself on allowing its citizens to make their own choices and to have control over their lives. We live in a nation that has led us to believe that our duly elected officials will listen to our voices and base their decisions on the good of the whole, not just the good of the few. Unfortunately, that isn't often the case. Unfortunately, elected officials often push their own agendas on the people they're supposed to be listening to. Which brings me to the actions of our school board with regard to the decision to terminate Dr. Asplin, a decision that was very clearly a partisan political move. Our recently elected school board members campaigned on a platform of transparency and parental rights, yet they're refusing to listen to the vast majority of parents and teachers and community members who want to retain Dr. Asplin. This school board has failed our community by choosing politics over education. Their blatant lack of transparency in deciding to terminate Dr. Asplin has destroyed our trust. Our community expects elected officials to listen to their constituents. We expect honesty. We expect transparency. I'm here to join my voice with the vast majority of the community and demand the following of the board. We demand transparency in all decisions and all actions made by the board majority. We demand the majority of the school board stop playing political games and partisan games that do nothing to improve education and only end up needlessly costing our community money. Our school board is supposed to be nonpartisan. It's not there to act as a stepping stone for anyone's political agenda. Our children are not pawns to be used in your convoluted political games, and our community's taxes aren't yours to be thrown away just to pander and preen to your base. This nation is supposed to be a democracy. I challenge you, prove it.
Thank you. Connie Bruni, Robin Williams, Laura Fredrickson.
Ladies and gentlemen, there are two main reasons, among many others, that I believe it is appropriate and important that the contract of Superintendent Asplin be terminated for cause. You have 4 choices tonight, so I hope that you will consider for cause. You're being shown grace, Dr. Asplin, to have negotiated a severance, as termination for cause would leave you with nothing except a tarnished professional reputation. Number 1, the Equity Committee was conceived, formed, and met completely outside the Florida Sunshine Laws. Policies were adopted as the fruit of this forbidden tree. Worse, the underlying purpose of the illegally formed committee was to serve as a tribunal decider of fact in cases such as the DJ case. That case that Dr. Asplin said the judge got it wrong. I'd like to know where you got your law degree. The case said was wrong. The real purpose of the illegal committee was to insulate the school district from parental lawsuits in court. Really? After adopting those policies from the illegal equity committee, suddenly, oopsie, we were outside the Sunshine Law. You are never going to convince me that a school district with over $1 billion, who spent over $1 million on legal fees, didn't have competent legal counsel to understand that that law applied to what you were doing. You will never convince me of that. Sorry, gotta go back to my comments. Number 2, let's talk about the employment of Dr. Asplin's spouse. It's a violation of nepotism. I read this to you before. The practice among those of power and influence in favoring relatives or friends, especially by giving them jobs. That's the Oxford Dictionary, not my opinion. That's the Oxford Dictionary description of that. The appearance of a conflict of interest is at best poor judgment on the part of a superintendent. At worst, the employment of one spouse, allegedly at a higher than scale rate of pay, constitutes direct nepotism and is a violation of state law, and want to make sure that you're aware of that. So that's another reason for cause should be given. Many examples by others have been highlighted, giving question about the truthfulness. But also, I've watched, because I've been here watching, the not treating of board members equally. That's a very important issue for you as lay people trying to make proper policy decisions. So when you're not being treated fairly, there's a problem there. I also want to make sure that you know, you are not bound by the previously constituted board or any of their actions. So please move forward.
Thank you very Pardon me. Thank you very much. Robin Williams, Laura Fredrickson, Carol Lerner.
It's become apparent over the past several weeks that most Sarasotans support Dr. Asplin. New board members Marinelli, Enos, and re-elected member Ziegler have shown their lack of independence from Governor DeSantis and those Zem supporters who for over 2 years directed an endless stream of invective against Superintendent Asplin, board member Tom Edwards, and recently retired board members Shirley Brown and Jane Goodwin. Their lockstep first act to eliminate the superintendent mirrored moves in other parts of the state where DeSantis-endorsed candidates won. These apparent sunshine violations must be investigated, and Karen Rose should resign. Why would the governor and his minions deliberately seek to cause chaos in public school districts? Because their real intention is to destroy public education. It started in Florida under Jeb Bush and continued with the passage of a slew of anti-teacher, pro-charter, pro-voucher legislation, particularly in the past 4 years under DeSantis. Since voucher legislation passed 2 years ago, Sarasota has already lost millions in state funding that's now going not just to charters, but to schools where standards are nil and people without any college can teach. And the state voucher formula will get worse over time, deliberately directing increasing amounts of taxpayer funding away from public schools. DeSantis wants to entice parents to pull their kids from public school and bankrupt public education. We're watching, and we won't stand by while fabricated culture wars are used to discredit public education while promoting bigotry, homophobia, racism, and anti-Semitism. It's no surprise that the Zem moms on their lack of transparency page are constantly blasting foundations with not so subtle anti-Semitic tropes. We'll be closely watching this board to see if there are moves taken against programs that rely on foundation support. The misnamed transparency page attacks foundations, including the Jewish Federation, the Barancik Foundation, the Glass Schoenbaum Human Services Center, charitable organizations supporting important Sarasota public school programs. A previous version of their pyramid also featured the Soros Foundation at the top, another favorite target of anti-Semites. They talk about how these so-called powerful foundations magically control everything, pulling the strings. This is an old anti-Semitic stereotype about how they, the Jews, control everything. I'm Jewish. And they're also liberals and leftists and Marxists and communists. Transparency moms and Connie Bruni, who just spoke.
Laura Fredrickson. Mrs. Williams, please, thank you. Next, I have Laura Fredrickson, Carol Lerner, and Joyce Peralta. And before we next speaker, excuse me, keep your comments to nothing while we listen to everyone else. I can handle the time clock. Thank you very much, and we'll keep moving. Thank you. Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Laura Fredrickson. I am a resident of Sarasota County. I have a prepared speech that I've been working on for a day. I'm wondering if we should all just maybe take a deep breath and realize that we're passionate about our children. And do we need it? Do we need it? Yes. I'm
Please keep your
serious,
comments to the board.
because I appreciate every single person.
Mrs.
in this
Fredrickson,
room.
please keep your comments to the board only.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you very much.
It's my first time. I'm
That's
not
okay.
a public
No,
speaker.
that's okay. We're
And
just
I'm
trying
just
to-
thinking the tension is going up and
I
it's-
appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Okay, all right. So I apologize to everyone. I have been a quiet observer in this state for 8 years. During the transition process of creating a new life, I read about an older couple from Seattle who took it upon themselves to do backpacks for the homeless. The decision was made to focus more on social services and retire from teaching. A pay cut was anticipated, but making high school nanny money was not. My Teacher Excellence Award is worthless in this state. It still makes me proud. I fully support retaining Dr. Asplin. I don't understand why we are one of 2 counties in the state to get an A rating. But I am willing to listen. You know what I mean? I would like to understand. I only want best for the teachers and the children and the residents in this county. I don't think, well, okay, so here was I apologize. I wanted to talk about fiscal responsibility. I wanted you to think hard about it. But I think enough has been said already. You know, parents, teachers, students, residents, the majority of the country wants to put politics and religion out of public education. So, God bless you all, and may He guide you to common sense. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Carol Lerner, Joyce Peralta, and Curtis Craig.
Good evening. My name is Carol Lerner, and I'm a leader of Support Our Schools. The petition being circulated by Support Our Schools calls for greater transparency of the newly constituted school board, especially in the aftermath of their likely but unwanted implementation of the firing of Superintendent Dr. Asplin. But the petition also calls for Karen Rose to resign. It is not just her actions of initiating the firing of Dr. Asplin that concerns the bulk of Sarasota community. Ms. Rose has a long history of hypocrisy and pandering to the worst people in our community. This was particularly apparent in a talk she gave a little over a year ago on December 3rd, 2021, a town hall at the Hollow, the far-right indoctrination camp in Venice, frequented by General Flynn. The event was organized by Unmasked Florida, a direct front group for the Sarasota Proud Boys. Its moderator was James Hoel, a leader of the Sarasota Proud Boys. Hoel was part of the Proud Boys vanguard that stormed the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. He is a frequent participant at these school board meetings and other local events where he has been photographed giving the white power sign. In his introduction of Ms. Rose, he called her, quote, a woman who has done a great job for many years. I was there at the Hollow and heard her, but I also transcribed sections of her speech and a Q&A that followed from a video posted on the internet by none other than the Proud Boys. Here are some direct quotes from the talk. In reference to the U.S. Department of Education, she called for its abolishment, saying, quote, as far as I am concerned, I want to totally and completely highlight and delete the U.S. Department of Education. It is against the Constitution. It has caused trouble. It was a farce. When asked if she was on board with a Marxist agenda in the schools, she said, no, I don't believe in Marxism. Okay. But then she said to a crowd of Proud Boys and their allies, I am a freedom fighter, a rebel. In explaining how she operates on the school board, she said, quote, I hide a lot of what goes on inside of me. Sometimes I may be vibrating and you don't see it. She then adds, I'm looking for a school board that thinks the way I think. In trying to justify why she stood up earlier in the year when Dr. Asplin received a standing ovation after denouncing the type of politics permeating board meetings as nonsense, she said, quote, I saw staff standing up, so I stood up. And as soon as I stood up, I knew I would be offending people. So I apologize to you and anyone who has been offended.
Thank you very much,
So as
Joyce.
SOS circulated petition concludes,
Mrs. Lerner?
she is the problem, not Dr. Asplin.
Mrs. Lerner, please. So I'm going to do this as a final warning. Otherwise, we're just going to go into recess. I can handle the time. I do let people finish their sentence. I'm trying to deploy that evenly. It's just the best way to keep this less rowdy. Lots of passion. I'm respectful of both sides. If people are, please keep your comments to the board. I understand that things are being said of all different people that may be found offensive. If we could all just be quiet and listen, I think we can get through tonight. You may proceed.
Hi, I'm Joyce Peralta. I moved to Sarasota a year ago from Michigan. My new construction neighborhood of 157 homes is full of families with young children. I asked my new neighbors, why did you move to Sarasota? Most of them are from out of state. They Googled the best school district in the country, and they Googled warm weather and good schools, and they came up with Sarasota. They always mentioned Tatum Ridge Elementary School as an outstanding school, and that's where they wanted their children to go. They didn't pay too much attention to the school board election. These families are busy working, spending time with their children, and settling into a new community. They heard the school board candidates say they wanted to take politics out of schools. That sounded good to them. Bridget Ziegler, Robin Marinelli, and Tim Enos did not campaign on firing Dr. Esplin, a highly rated school superintendent. These parents were too busy to notice these three candidates were personally connected to the Proud Boys and the governor of Florida. They didn't notice the Moms for Liberty group causing chaos on purpose in schools across the country, founded by Bridget Ziegler. They didn't notice Moms for Liberty is supported by Michigan's own Betsy DeVos, whose goal is to destroy public schools and to privatize schools. Is it a coincidence that Broward, Brevard, and Sarasota's highly rated superintendents were all fired or proposed to be fired as soon as new conservative school boards took over? The community demands good, competent public schools, as most families would rather put their hard-earned dollars into college funds rather than private school tuition. The political nature of the board's activities thus far show a complete disrespect for honesty and transparency. Many of us now believe you will not bother to search for the best candidate, as the previous Sarasota board did to attract Dr. Esplin. Instead, it looks like you have a hand-picked political candidate ready as the interim superintendent, as well as the permanent one, or one that will agree to your political agenda. If this board wants to disprove my assertions, they still have a chance to do this. Calm down this disruption in our schools and community. Of course, my first recommendation is to reverse your plans and beg Dr. Esplin to stay. I know of no other school superintendents that have the support of over 90% of the teachers, administrators, and overwhelming support of parents and students. Even if this required a performance bonus contract to encourage Dr. Esplin to stay, this would be the best and most economical choice for the board to make at this point. If your political plans cannot accept this, option 2 is to engage in a transparent, non-political search for a new superintendent, taking into account the community of teachers, parents, and students, as well as sunshine laws. You, board, have created this school community unrest. It's in your hands to improve it with accountability, transparency, and professionalism. Put our kids first.
Thank you very much. I have Curtis Craig, Louise Machinist, and Sally Nista.
Hi, good evening. My name is Curtis Craig. I'm a former lieutenant commander in the U.S. Navy, and I've had multiple Fortune 500 executive positions. Since the 29th, I've talked to a lot of parents and teachers, really to just get an understanding of what's going on here. And across the board, the parents I speak to, the teachers I speak to, we're all baffled. In the corporate world, when we want to effect a major change, we don't just roll right into firing somebody. We present our case. We present, hey, if test scores are an issue, let's present it. Let's talk about it. Let's hypothesize. What's the root cause here? And then plot a track forward. You don't just run right into firing somebody. So you guys all compete. You guys all campaign on change. Change is great. Totally agree with that. I think there are lots of changes that we can make here. Let's maybe think about how we can get our kids to school and back safely, because that's been a problem here. School supplies, teachers digging into their own pockets, caring for the children. $240,000 or whatever the cost to replace Dr. Asplin's going to be, it's going to go a long way towards getting us some crossing guards, getting us some school supplies. But terminating the #1 superintendent in the state of Florida without cause is not the type of change that you just roll right into. Is it test scores? If test scores are the issue, then let's see the plan. And by the time August of 2024 rolls around, we better see some statistically different test scores. We better see an improvement here, because I'm going to be watching. This board, so last time we had 4 hours of public commentary, the vast majority supporting Dr. Esplin. We've had polls. I mean, you can see where the community stands. So the question I have for this board is, who do you serve? Because I don't see how you could possibly claim that you serve the community. You've heard us. You've heard us speak. So that's what I wonder. Who do you serve? Is it Fox News? Is it Newsmax? Is it DeSantis? That's what I wonder. So if it is DeSantis, okay, then, okay, we have and you guys are educators, okay, so we have a type of government here where we have elected officials that do not listen to constituents, but they listen to the layer above, right? They take commands from above. What kind of government is that? Well, you see that in China. That's communism, right? We're also talking about banning books. Yes, I am military. And I did not I did not risk my neck for politicians who don't listen to their constituents. So we have a county on the edge. That's what when I talk to teachers, when I talk to parents, because we don't know what you're gonna do next, right? You're gonna roll right in, fire the superintendent. Who else are you gonna fire? What are you gonna try to replace him with? It trickles down to the kids, and that's what matters here. They're gonna sense it. Whoever your next superintendent is, my 12-year-old mentioned this, I hope that the next person that you put in as superintendent is going to at least understand what a 7-day waiting period is. So my recommendation here is please withdraw this motion, right the ship, focus on the kids.
Thank you so much. Luis Machinist, Sally Nista, Barbara Logan.
Hi, everybody. I'm Louise Machinist, and I don't need 3 minutes. I'm going to be really brief. I'm here for the purpose of asking for the resignation of Karen Rose. I'm here to ask for the resignation of the ZEM team. I have some sympathy for Tim Enos and Robin Marinelli. I've talked with all of you folks. I think you were owned and you were used, and this has hurt your reputations. But of course, you're responsible for making your own decisions. So I'm here just to ask for the resignations of the 4 board members for malfeasance, for allowing political corruption to take over a nonpartisan board, and for fiscal irresponsibility costing taxpayers multiple hundred thousands of dollars. Many of people have already mentioned those things. I'll just add with one question, and I'm definitely not a conspiracy theorist, but I am pretty sure that you already have at least a short list, maybe only one name, of a right-wing extremist Hillsdale College-type educator, probably given to you by Ron DeSantis and Manny Diaz, and I want to know who that is.
Thank you very much. Sally Nista, Barbara Logan, Tracy Raleigh.
Sally Nista, I support our Constitution. Y'all look really good in red. Barbara's praying for you is working. It's really sad that a group that promotes faith, family, and freedom is seen as bad. What does our country's values come to? Dr. Asplin, I'd have some advice for you in your next job, not in Sarasota. Follow the law. Be truthful. It will serve you so much better than it did us here with you. It's sad that some of the people here have such low standards for their leaders. Sarasota schools deserve a true, hardcore leader that's going to take us where our kids are going to shine. They're not going to serve the small 5%. They're going to serve all of the students. That's what we need, is a superintendent and a board that's going to look at all kids, not the minorities, not the small little groups, but all of the kids. Tim and Bridget, thank you for standing tall.
Thank you very much. Barbara Logan, Tracy Raleigh, Marjorie Peter.
Barbara Logan, I live in Osprey, Florida. I'm a former public school Latin teacher and former released union president and former field rep for a teachers union. If I were a bus driver in a school district or a teacher or administrator and I had a evaluation as highly effective, I would feel very confident going out and buying a large TV on credit, paying it off. I'd have a job that I could pay it off, or get a bigger car, and I'd feel like I could pay that off, and maybe even take out a mortgage and pay that every month, because I would feel I had a good job. And I felt like if I wasn't doing a good job, they would tell me what I needed to do in order to come up to par for them. That's been true in every district that I've ever worked in, as a teacher or as a union rep. And I just cannot believe that this has happened in this county. Now, several years ago, when my husband and I came back to Sarasota from retirement, and my husband was a former executive director of the Sarasota Classified Teachers Association. School board elections were coming, and we're rabid Democrats. But the union endorsed Karen Rhodes, and so we went in and talked to Barry Dubin and the president and so forth. And they said they talked so much about how Karen was an outstanding teacher. Her students performed top notch. She really reached out to grab the potential of all those, get the potential of all those students. And then when she was a school principal, her staff and her worked together to to bring out the potential of all the students as much as humanly possible. If a staff person got unsatisfactory, she worked with that person and the union to get that staff person up to snuff to perform. And I thought, well, this is a type of person we need in this school system, to bring out the potential in people. And I am just shocked when I came and found out that, like that, the superintendent was being dismissed, not even given a chance to work with a new school board. I mean, for no reason at all. And your Miss Potential, Karen Rhodes, bring out the potential in this man. We have a great school district, and we can't afford to let him go.
Thank you very much. I have Tracy Raleigh, Marjorie Peter, Sandy Armstrong.
Hello, Mrs. Ziegler. Well, 4 of you don't know me. Mrs. Ziegler does. I'm Tracy Raleigh. I live in Northport. I have 1 child left in school. Our children already shine. And that people think that this school board in DeSantis gave us parental rights is almost funny. Oddly enough, I've had parental rights through the 14th Amendment in U.S. Code the entire 27 years I've had children in school. Your dog whistle is nonsense. To test scores, check the NAEP. Not one school in the entire country had higher scores in 2022 than they did in 2019. Mrs. Rose has more complicity in the falling of test scores than Dr. Asplin, just based on time with the district. That said, this is wrong. This being the firing of our superintendent. Keep in mind that I speak based on his political affiliation. I likely never would have voted for him if this had been an elected position, which also made me realize why you want this to be an elected position. No, thank you. But I digress. This is wrong. I lost my spot. 2 of you have voted to remove a man of caliber and integrity, and you don't even know him. I heard the attorney at the last meeting say no laws have been broken, so this all boils down to 1 board member who just can't work with him. To that, I say the one with the problem needs to step down. And yes, I realize that could be shooting ourselves in the foot, because at least we know the dishonesty of the board member who should step down. We have a good idea what we'd get for a replacement. Dr. Asplin may be conservative, but at least he's not extremist, which seems to be who's calling the shots. This is wrong for a myriad of reasons, and you know it. Thank you, Dr. Asplin, for getting us through 2 tumultuous years. I wish you the best in future endeavors.
Thank you very much. Marjorie Peter, Sandy Armstrong, Chloe Boggs.
Superintendent, board members, my name is Marjorie Peter. I've been a resident of the county since '87. and have had 3 children who are products of the county school system. Several times I've used my citizen comment period to encourage people in this room to volunteer for programs like the Science Fair, which I hope will happen in January, and for the campaign to bring kids up to their reading level, which has been supported by the Partisan Foundation. And I hope that will still happen. Because now I wonder, why bother? Have you already made a decision away from the public, away from workshops, to drop programs that you personally don't like? Because if you can make a decision about firing a highly effective superintendent by skirting with potentially violating the Sunshine Law, how can we trust you with other decisions? I don't see any record in which, in a workshop, you discussed gross dissatisfaction with Superintendent Asplund. Why not? Because the 2 new board members had not even been on the board long enough to attend a workshop, let alone work with the superintendent. You have a steep hill to climb to restore trust in the community. If you choose not to pull back on your hasty decision, you will need a massive citizen-led committee to, number 1, approve any appointment of an interim director, the superintendent, and 2, to search for a replacement superintendent willing to work with a board that potentially violates Sunshine Law. You've lost our trust on many levels. Good luck.
Thank you very much. Marjorie Peter, Sandy Armstrong, Chloe Boggs. That's what I thought. Sandy Armstrong, Chloe Boggs.
I'm
Kathy
Sandy
Antunes.
Armstrong. People have already said pretty much what I was going to say today, but I want to say, number 1, I still appreciate you, Dr. Asplund, so much, and so many people in this community do. I'm very, very concerned about the level of transparency that happened among y'all to immediately, barely when part of you were sworn in, to suggest that Dr. Asplund be let go. That it doesn't, nothing feels like sunshine in that. It feels like a really dark cloud. And I'm again concerned that we're wasting $175,000 plus whatever else it's going to cost to get somebody else in here. And all that money could be going to our great teachers and our schools and our children. And I just feel like you're wasting our money, our taxpayer money, and you're not being transparent. When 90% of parents and teachers support keeping this guy, I think you at least owe him the honor of being in his job while you're new on the school board to see if you can work it out. Tom Edwards suggested having a mediator. Many places who are having trouble sorting things out or figuring it out together have mediators. It's a great idea. And we could get on with having school board meetings that have to do with the quality of education instead of this political non-transparency. Thank you.
Thank you. Chloe Boggs, Kathy Antunes, Jeffrey Scott.
Hello. I'm the president of the youth chapter of Women's Voices of Southwest Florida and a senior at Riverview High School. Over the course of my 4 years attending public school in Sarasota, I've become gradually more aware of the rising political tension imposed by so-called parental rights groups. I have realized that my education is under attack. My teachers are under attack. This is the result of fear-mongering and scare tactics used to force parents into feeling that their children are being indoctrinated or subjected to some new woke way of teaching. Here's the truth. Your kids are not being taught critical race theory by drag queens. But they are having politics shoved down their throats by an increasingly politicized school system. I can confidently say that we students want to receive a safe and enjoyable education, which is being made impossible. Teachers and administrators are walking on eggshells in fear that they may face punishment for being truthful and fair to their students, perhaps because these concepts oppose the parental rights agenda. Just this past week, I'd witnessed a particularly upsetting incident while walking down the hallway at school. A group of Spanish-speaking students walk in front of me making friendly conversation. To my right, walking beside me, a teacher shakes her head and shouts, "Speak English, speak English." My jaw dropped in shock. I could only perceive this as an action of racial prejudice, a message of hate. Questions flooded my mind. Why would the teacher have a problem with the student speaking Spanish? Could my appalled response to the incident be an overreaction? Whether this teacher meant this as a joke or knew these students personally is besides the point. It is quite evident that insensitivity and far-right rhetoric like the comment made by this teacher is fostered by hate and fear-driven political groups, similar to those that have infiltrated our school system. I am scared for our students. I am scared for those who are afraid to be themselves because of the hate flooding our schools. I am scared for the teachers who have to ask for a parent's permission to call students by their chosen name or respect their new pronouns, threatening that student's home life and therefore well-being. I am scared for administrators and loyal school system members who genuinely want to help our schools, but don't want to receive the treatment that Superintendent Brennan Asplin did. The bottom line is that we students are the future. We have a right to an honest, safe, inclusive education. We deserve to be taught real history. We deserve to be respected and accepted in an environment that is preparing us for a successful adulthood. This epidemic of politicizing public education has to stop. On behalf of Women's Voices of Southwest Florida, I ask that you retain Dr. Asplin and prove to us that our voices do matter.
Thank you. Ms. Kathy Antunes, Jeffrey Scott, Shannon Clement.
Good evening, everyone. I have been really impressed with a lot of input I've heard. I actually agree with a lot of people who've spoken. I moved here, and hats off to our military service member who spoke. I was a military spouse. I moved my children 9 times in 14 years. I didn't do that to be quiet when I see such gross manipulation of what this country stands for and our democracy. There has been no cogent, to use a word of a prior speaker, explanation for this board about taking the livelihood and professionalism of a very talented person and just throwing it away. You have not done your due diligence with this community. Furthermore, the game you're playing is, you know that you wouldn't have had the votes to win had you been transparent. You would not be in those seats if you had been honest with the public about what you were going to do. Integrity and talent are not something to throw away. How you're treating this person is shameful. I did see Mr. Ziegler and Mr. Gruters promote election denial. I saw them promote, and I've documented it again and again, an insurrection. These are the worst people who want to wash their hands and agitate others. And now the pivot was mask mandates and school boards. You had a speaker here calling the support for Mr. Asplin an insurrection. This doesn't resemble any conservative ideal I know. I voted for Republicans many times. The Proud Boys were involved in supporting them, and you know, hats off, you guys won. They worked hard. But after the election, after you were photographed, Bridget Ziegler, with the Proud Boys, you told the media this: the Proud Boys are a menace. They aren't involved in the work, and they played no part in the win. But they attend public events and try to photobomb every photo just to secure attention and headlines. The duplicity has gone too far. You are agitating people and using them, and you are hurting the community, and you are treating a professional person very badly. You have not done your job. He deserves to stay. We deserve to have him stay. And you need to knock it off with how you're playing games with people's service to this country. It is disgusting.
Thank you. Jeffrey Scott, Shannon Clement, Michael Weddle.
Good evening, school board. In the polarizing times we live, it is reasonable to assume the position of school superintendent may be subject to factors that are political, social, and cultural in context. These societal factors have created unrest amongst various stakeholder groups, which have directly impacted our Sarasota County schools. To date, the public demand for change has intensified scrutiny and criticism of the position of school superintendent. Taking the high road, as Superintendent Dr. Asplin has done, is the right course of action, and I wish him success as a highly regarded and experienced school superintendent. In the interim, it's imperative the Sarasota County School Board have an unwavering commitment to shape the school board superintendent relationship as one that is built on trust, mutual respect, and a much deeper commitment to the district's strategic plan and overall student achievement goals. Thank you.
Thank you. Shannon Clement, Michael Weddle, Liz Barker.
I'm Shannon Clement. I'm the parents of a child who's currently enrolled in our Sarasota County Public Schools, and I can assure you all I brought myself here. I wasn't bussed in, and I haven't been paid for my comments this evening. That being said, I believe that there needs to be advocacy for all of our children and against those that wish to impose a singular worldview, and it's to that end I feel that the ousting of Superintendent Asplin will be an exceptionally detrimental for the end users of this board is supposed to represent. Our teachers, and above all our children, who are still recovering from the disruption of COVID. It was repeatedly pointed out by representatives of a certain group in the last public comments and on social media that there were a rather large number of new faces with speculation on the reason for such a significant turnout. A turnout whose opinions 4 of you blatantly ignored and by all appearances will continue to do so, though I hope that won't be the case this evening. And that was through your own confessions of outreach you had all received prior to last meeting. It was also pointed out that, quote unquote, the public had spoken at the ballot box. The reality, however, is of the approximately 349,000 registered voters at the time of the August elections that determined your seats, a little under 37% voted. I wouldn't say that was most of the community or even most of the registered voters in this county. But, you know, I'm not good with math, so you figure that out. But then again, history has shown us anything. It's that those with extreme views rely and hope for that the majority simply won't participate. I did participate, by the way. In addition to that, I've counted this evening, and up until my speaking at this podium, of all of the people that have come before me, only 11 have been in support of Dr. Asplin leaving. Everybody else has been in favor of keeping him and have tried to appeal to your consciousness to keep him on, and hopefully, Dr. Asplin, if that option is available, you'll continue to do so, because I thank you for your service. Unfortunately for that extremely forceful minority, the immediate repercussions hit a lot of the community hard, and I like to use Newton's first law of motion to illustrate my point. A body at rest will remain at rest, while a body in motion will remain in motion until acted upon by an external force. Certain entities have remained in motion for a while now, relatively unopposed. Most regrettably have remained at rest. Their reasons for not being more involved previously are now irrelevant. The body at rest has reached their limit and has woken up, pun intended. I say this to the board and to the minority that has placed you there. I suspect you'll be seeing a lot more parents like me, and we will not allow you to impose your misplaced beliefs on all of our children. You are not the majority, and you do not speak for all of us. I leave you all with this. What are your solutions to ensuring all voices and needs are represented moving forward, and not just those of your benefactors? Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Weddle, Liz Barker, and Randy Thies.
Hi. Thank you to the school board. I'm Mike Weddle. I live in Venice. I volunteer in the schools. This is my second board meeting. The last time I was here, I spoke in support of Dr. Asplin. I'm not going to repeat myself tonight. I'm really here because I read the editorial board's advice offering to the school board in today's paper, suggesting the Herald Tribune, it's the Sarasota Herald Tribune, offering the school board a path forward through this based on accountability and based on transparency. One of my many roles in my career was quality chairman for a hospital system with 2,500 employees. And the advice offered by the editorial board really was very, very familiar to me, based on accountability and based on transparency. In the hospital business, there's a very low tolerance for failure. And my concern is that the school board, maybe the new members that are more inexperienced, may not understand what such public failure this early in your tenure may mean going forward. Just the fact that there are so many different opinions on both sides here of why this is happening and why this might be happening, is itself a failure of leadership, because no one really understands what is at the core of this. Someone mentioned root cause. In the hospital, when there's a significant incident, we do what's called a root cause analysis. We put all the data on the table from the very beginning. Everyone involved comes into the room, and no one leaves until you can make the connections between the data and the outcome. And that's really what the editorial board and the Herald Tribune was recommending this morning, to put the facts on the table. You're public officials, you're elected. Don't wait for the paper to get a hold of your emails and texts. Put them out there, let people see. Connect the dots so that we know going forward what went into this, and so candidates will know who you're looking for, because candidates aren't going to know until that is really understood. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Liz Barker, Randy Thies, Sarah Parker.
Members of the school board, my name is Liz Barker. I am a mother of 4, so I'm really just here to avoid bedtime. No, actually, I have three of my children are school-aged and are in Sarasota County Public Schools, and we love our schools dearly. I'm also a former school psychologist, so I come at this from an educator and as a mother. I'm really here to voice my support for Dr. Asplin and to ask you humbly to consider retaining him. The strategic plan that Dr. Asplin recently developed and implemented is evidence-based, it's appropriate, and it was well received by the community. As you know, Dr. Asplin is supported by the vast majority of educators and parents. He received an evaluation of highly effective or effective by 4 of the 5 school board members. Your outrageous motion to terminate Dr. Asplin's contract without cause is in no way representative of the wishes of this community. We do not want to undergo another expensive and tumultuous search for superintendent. As our representatives, we expect you to put aside your politics, analyze the information critically, and make informed decisions based on what is best for our children. Offering the superintendent a severance package does not assuage your responsibility for this inexcusable action. Please stand by your campaign promises of transparency and respect for parent input. The movement to unseat the superintendent was in no way transparent, and it does not respect our input. We are begging you not to waste our taxpayers' dollars and to listen to us. Mr. Enos, Ms. Marinelli, do what is right, not what is easy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Randy Thies, Sarah Parker. And Katie
Randy
Danette
Thies.
Samsitz. I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'm just going to call the last speaker, Katie Danette Samitz. Go ahead.
My name is Randy Thies. I have 38 years teaching, 24 in Sarasota County. Dear School Board, please reconsider your vote on Dr. Asplin leaving. And Dr. Asplin, even if you have offers from other schools, which I'm guessing you may have, please, a lot of people here love you. The governor, who I have supported, led a rally for current school board members in August. Current school board members went on Fox TV when they won and stressed they were conservatives. The governor then went on TV and said the conservatives won, even though $1 million was spent to keep conservatives out. The school union said they spent $2,000, so I'm not sure where that $1 million came from. We spent more than that on a current school board member, the union did, 2 years ago. But in 1998, a state ballot was voted on and won. It said school board races should be nonpartisan. Can any of you sit up there and put your hand on a Bible and say, this is a nonpartisan? The teachers and students, we don't have a chance when it comes to testing this year. If the scores are up, it will be said it was because Dr. Asplin was let go. If the scores are down, it will be said it was because of Dr. Asplin. That's why we got rid of him. No mention will be found any place about all the work that has gone into preparing for these tests by Dr. Asplin and teachers and staff. It has been said as that we're a woke school. And I've taught here 24 years. I had to look up what woke was. Forgive me, I didn't know what it was. And the best I can tell, it's, that we should be aware of racism and sexism and be aware of things that are going on around us. But I've never been told that we're a woke school until this year. Then there was some concern about critical race theory. And there was a study, the best I can tell, that was done, 2,700 teachers. One person had signed something related to that, and that was being looked into. So there may be something we're talking about. And then masks, which seems to be a big concern. The governor, he decided to close schools down. 5 months later, he changed his mind. We were asked to do that faster, and we took 3 or 4 weeks to get that taken care of. But we never broke a law because there was no law in effect when we said we want to just stay here. It was a thing the governor said he wanted. A court disagreed with him. Another court overrode that and just set it on the table.
Thank you very much. Sarah Parker and Katie Danette Sametz.
Hi, my name is Sarah Parker, and I'm the president of Women's Voices Southwest Florida, and I'm also on the leadership board of the spooky, infamous BLM. I'm going to go ahead and start off with, I am now a mother of a Sarasota County student, so you'll be seeing me more often. I think I talked to you guys, at least Bridget, I talked to you guys before last time. And I've worked with both sides of this community during the hurricane and other initiatives. So I will say that our group is not pandered. We do not pander to any organization nor any party. We do what we want. I do what I want because I'm a grown individual. And I'm also an American. I am a proud African American, even when you try to erase my history. See, because you can be left-leaning and you can be pro-America. It is un-American to call people not American based on their own family views and values, because I don't want my family views and values shoved down your throat. We should be able to meet in the middle with that. What I want for my America, and what I want since my ancestors have been fighting in America since the 1600s, is for equity and equality. That doesn't seem like a hard ask, definitely since we've been doing it for so long. I am here to stand in solidarity with my youth chapter. I had my youth chapter vice president call me from her school when they took place with when there was a teacher yelling at students to speak English. These are real problems that you guys should be focusing on. Also, everybody keeps bringing up reading levels. Now, I'm not very clear on what the reading levels are. To be completely honest, my kid's in pre-K. But I'm going to say this. If you all cared so much about reading levels, why was there not a special meeting for that? Why was there no motion for reading levels? Your first move was to fire a major employee. How does that help reading levels? I'm totally just trying to understand. And like I tell my organization, this is some advice I'm gonna give you guys. Be solution-driven, don't be problem-driven. And that's what you're doing right now by trying to fire Dr. Asplin. Again, there are real issues. I live in downtown. I live in the hood. And in the hood, there are children walking home at night from the bus because y'all don't have enough bus drivers. There are not enough aides. I get an email all the time for aides and volunteers. Not enough aides, not enough teachers, not enough bus drivers. Well, y'all are about to go fire one employee. And then if you listen to half of them, go investigate other employees and start knocking them off. Where are you going to find the teachers, the bus drivers, and the employees to run the county? I just have to say, I don't know, this is happening around the country. We're seeing this. And I don't know if one of you guys got a special viewing of the Sanctimonious New Age Mein Kampf and you're taking a page out of it, but we have to stop playing politics right now. I think everyone in this room, everyone needs to stop playing politics right now. And I also have come to believe that all of your feet are in each other's mouths right now. Y'all don't know what to do. And just like the Brevard County just now, if you look at the news, they are now retaining their superintendent because they realize they messed up. Y'all are wasting time and y'all are wasting money and going to being fiscally conservative. $400,000? Can we give some bus drivers a bonus so there's black children not walking at night? Because we barely got lights on the streets.
Thank you very much. Katie Danette Sametz is our final speaker.
That's Katie Danahy Sametz, but I applaud that.
Apologies,
Yeah,
I'm so sorry.
No, I applaud that. That was great. So my name is Katie Danahy Sametz. I am here in my official capacity as a vice president and founder of Women's Voices of Southwest Florida. For those that don't know, Women's Voices of Southwest Florida is a nonpartisan grassroots organization and nonprofit that is dedicated to defending reproductive freedom, human rights, civil liberties, and investing back into our communities. So here today, obviously, in support of our youth chapter, in support of the majority of people here, and to echo their support, echo their concerns. Across the state of Florida, we're seeing an injection of politics into what should fundamentally be the most nonpartisan platform in existence, public school, public education, and the school board. And we know that Moms for Liberty has taken over. I'm here to remind you that the entire nation is actually watching what's going on right now because Ms. Moms for Liberty and her Proud Boys have put Sarasota in the national spotlight. Moms for Liberty says that what's right for one parent isn't right for every parent. Y'all said that we do not co-parent with the government, so you took over 150 school boards and immediately moved to terminate every woke superintendent in America at the same time. We see you. We see you, okay? You don't want to co-parent with the government, but you're working to force every other parent to co-parent to your conservative values because that is your version of freedom. That's your idea of freedom. I hate that I have to say this. It's 2022. This is America. Joe Biden won the election. Everything you're doing belongs in 1930s Germany. And you would know that if you weren't working to remove that from the curriculum as well. So as I look around this room and I hear the majority of the community that's come together from either corners of the aisle to support Dr. Asplin, and it really only solidifies the point that this is a nonpartisan issue. And as I've sat here at my first Sarasota County school board meeting, I've heard a lot of both sides. I've heard students, parents, teachers, and allies from all political affiliations coming together and organizing in defense of Dr. Asplin. And I've heard political posturing, red meat trigger words like groomers, fake news, and pornography, which, by the way, I would love some of those titles to those books that were referenced. And I hear one side more than others speak over speakers as they're trying to speak. It really seems like there's a group running this meeting and not the chair. The red meat is meant to scare people into submission, and I don't know how else to say this, but we will not submit. We will not submit. We might not, this is a good one. You might not want to offer transparency, but we see right through you. And by the way, all of this is why Gen Z, millennials, we don't want to have kids, because this nonsense right here. Okay, the future deserves better than what we're getting. It's really nice to meet you. You're going to get real tired of us, but we're not going anywhere. Love you, bye.
Thank you. That concludes public comment. We are going to take a 10-minute recess.